impact to the business if the application goes down. We talk about the data classification, asking what if an application, what kind of data, is it sensitive, is it internal, is it personal, where does it stand for us today? So the next thing we ask ourselves, right? So very, very simple and really initial kind of way to categorize the risk. The next thing we would ask ourselves on more the dynamic would be, is it a crown jewel application? Is it still in project or in development mode? How many users are we having? Where is it hosted? Is it in the cloud? Is it in the on-prem? Is it even maybe a SaaS application, right? We want to ask ourselves not only on the in-house developed application, but also on the SaaS ones. Does it interact with external data sources? What's the bill of materials? Where is it hosted? How many changes does it have on a weekly, monthly basis, right? So more dynamic characteristics for that application, right? So we kind of say we are growing our inventory with more places to measure it, places to censor. And, you know, as we mature more, we can for sure add more controls, right? How many developers? Do we have security on the branches? Do we have all security tools running on all the pipelines? So as we more mature, we can enrich our model, at least our static model for sure. Going deeper, right? So how is the architecture changing? What is the architecture? How much documentation do we have? Is it available? Is it updated? Who is developing that? Is it a vendor developing that? Is it a hybrid team? Is it an internal team? Is it a product team that's building that? How do we authenticate, right? Is it an SSO? Is it user password? Do we use any identity as a service? And then we kind of help build more automation around our real time and changes with the application. So one quick example, right? So a bonus application, it's kind of a platform, a very small considered application that helps every employee use the application to see their benefits for the next year, see their bonuses, see new agreements with employees, and estimated salary. Can do some forecast. If my salary is increased by 10% by end of next year, how much will I earn? How much taxes will I pay? So very typical and simple people-based applications. And then if we go into the deep dive for that application, is this a risky application, right? Let's try to ask ourselves, so do we have any personal information within the application? Probably not, right? Because it's just a calculation-based application. You would authenticate that, but you would not save any information on you, or you can save anonymized data for the user. Is it under any regulation? No, because we are not in the PCI. We're not processing any credit cards. We're not holding any PII, so no GDPR or LGPD or other privacy related. Did we have any prior assessment results? So perhaps we've done some penetration tests when the application went live. We found some low risk findings. So let's add 2 points there. How many people are using that application? How many transactions do we have over a month? So a few thousand transactions. Who are the targets? Employees. And so we would kind of have a spreadsheet where we say, if it's employees, we'll add 2. If it's consumers or customers, we'll add more points, right? So if it's externally facing and it's used by customers and it stores passwords, so everything every characteristic would add more points to our risk model. So if it's a single page application, it will add, let's say, for example, 4 points. If it's a monolith, it might be more risky because of the way it's structured, and updating that will be a little harder, and upgrading, and if you have to have one single point of authentication authorization, but then you have lots of moving components, moving parts within the application. So again, many ways to kind of find the right balance, but this is the static model, right? Very simple approach. We have a number in the end, right? So this is a very qualitative number quantitative number to say, 27. Let's say if it was 50, we would say it's a medium risk. If it was above 60, we would say it's a high risk. And then we can prioritize our activities. We can prioritize our efforts into first protecting the high risk applications, trying to reduce those, but also make sure that we have visibility into the low risk ones. And once every few months, also do a pulse check on them. Okay. So how about risk, right? So risk changes over time, and we want to say that it's dynamic, and the reason behind that is that our product teams, our marketing teams, our sales teams, because of the cloud, they can buy a server, they can bring up a new marketing website, they can bring up a new sales portal, they can bring up a new application in a minute, in a matter of days, right? And even less. But so if they do that in isolation, or if they do that without the security team's involvement, only kind of having the visibility on that, so they can open SSH port to the internet, they can open MySQL port to the internet, they can buy a new platform as a service database, they can kind of really do lots of things that I would say for their application, if they say we need to connect remotely, and that's why we opened SSH, or that's why we opened the database, that kind of changes the way we would see the application risk, because now it's internet facing and its management ports is internet facing. And then, I think on a daily basis, right? So business teams, product teams create vulnerabilities on a daily basis. So hopefully you do agree with that, right? So if you don't, maybe you don't have the visibility, or have very, very good security assurance processes that those teams are currently working for ways to bypass them. But essentially, we want to say that an application changes every day, every minute on its threat landscape. And I want to show some examples, right? So we kind of move an application to the cloud, or we try to reduce the bill, or we try to reduce the cloud bill. So we replace our VMs with some kind of as a service, right? So we replace our database as a service for a platform, MySQL on the cloud, right? Past services, RDS, or other services from Azure or GCP or Alibaba Cloud, right? We move from user password managed within our database to identity as a service. So we leverage Cognito, or we leverage Azure B2C, or any other identity as a service provider. So that changes now the risk for the application, for the better, for the positive. But we have to be aware of that, and we have to see, okay, did you harden that new service that you're starting to use, right? This is the question that we would ask the team on that. Or intelligence for a new vulnerable dependency, or new component that is used, or a new product within our company, right? Because we have the complete bill of materials. We know that, for example, we use SolarWinds, and then if there's intelligence around a new backdoor, we can go and reach out to the teams, because we know we have that vulnerable version. We know where we are, so we can go and talk to the team and try to understand the risk, and set some more monitoring on top of that. Or even for just SCA, right? Software composition analysis. There's a new vulnerability in Spring, or in Struts, or in Lodash. We're aware of that, and we can act upon that. One other example on dynamic changes is that one of our application, or someone makes a repository public, or someone commits or forks a repository and then uploads that to the public, just for training, or just for doing some experiments. But if repository is exposed to the public, and we don't have enough controls, we might have secrets there. So we have to necessarily, as soon as possible, replace credentials, revoke all access keys, and really understand what happened, how did that happen. A few more examples, right? So trivial examples on new developers committing code, new developers touching security-related features like authentication, like logging. So when we see that, we are aware of that. We have the monitoring on that, and then we can schedule a coding training session, or a more in-depth review by a senior developer for the changes. Or for sure, very trivial. We've done a penetration test. We identified high-risk findings. So now we need to go back to update our application risk profile to say, okay, we have high-risk findings in the application. This might trigger the application being from medium risk to high risk. And then for us, what we have to do for sure is to go to the team, understand root cause analysis, perform that, perform training, make sure that our application security tools are really fine-tuned with the rule sets and tweaks to actually be able to detect some of the things that could be detected by those tools that were found in the penetration testing. So these are the dynamic, and for sure there are more characteristics that affect the application. Just wanted to give you a number of examples. And that's why I wanted to go and say, we need to have monitoring of our code. We need to have monitoring of our software management platforms, of our code management platforms, of our cloud, in order to be able to detect those changes that would feed back into the application risk profile with every change, right? So we're switching a database and by using a platform database, suddenly the database is externally facing, right? Something that we would not be used to from when we were using on the data center, where everything was internal. We had our application DMZ, but in the cloud, it's by default, everything is more open. So we need to go and turn off all those public-facing features. Cool. As we move further to our DevOps and we release faster, we release more features. We have a shortage of application security engineers and architects, and even security champions. And so sometimes we might release our code with risks. And so I think that happens more and more. And today, what we have to be able to understand is that the application changes, the risk changes in real time, and therefore we need to have a more proactive approach to the risk remediation, right? And let's share a number of use cases where a code changes actually should trigger a security review, right? So this is our product, right? So let's say we have a new externally facing API. So if we are able to detect that some developer A has pushed a new controller, REST controller, and that is now externally facing in our product, and they're either doing that at a V2 API version, right? So V1, V2, V3. So they're releasing new interfaces, new functionality. We need to be able to detect that. Does that functionality has, for example, delete operation, right? Does that functionality change anything in the data model, right? So having new functionality is something that we want to be able to issue a review upon, saying, okay, this looks functionality that does not modify the risk, or okay, we have a new integration. We have to go in, kind of do a more deep dive on that to make sure that we are working according to the best practices. Let's say new technology was introduced to our application. Let's say we moved to using Vault, right? Either a HashiCorp Vault or any other solution from Azure, from AWS. So this is a new technology. We have to go and protect it. We started using, a service mesh, right? So we are now controlling the traffic between microservices. Okay, let's do a secure review to make sure that we are actually using that technology properly, and we're not just saying we have service mesh, so we are secure. Network changes, the same, right? So we have a new integration. We open a port, we open a firewall. A new IP is whitelisted in the Kubernetes private API endpoint. So every change has to be controlled. A new Kubernetes operator, a new ingress controller. Every new change within our product changes the risk. We remove some authentication or some endpoint. Now, we used to have authorization. Now that was removed because we are refactoring that, or someone has forgotten, or it's a new developer that has created a new API or changed some new API, but forgot to add authentication or authorization, because authentication is centrally managed. So hopefully we mature and we also have authorization centrally managed, but if not, we have to be able to detect that some of our API endpoints might not check for user permissions to perform the activity in that, or there's a new sensitive API, right? created. Dependency changes. Someone removed a dependency, someone introduced a new dependency, someone upgraded or downgraded the dependency, creating or changing the risk for our product. And for sure, again, many more examples exist on that, but maybe the data model has changed. So suddenly we start to accept payments, and we start to request credit card information, we start to request phone numbers, we start requesting addresses. Some of our responses now return more data than they should have been returning when we first reviewed that application. So the application is kind of a live creature. It changes, it grows, it shrinks, it grows hands, it grows legs, and we have to be able to see every change and think whether that is a security risk and how do we mitigate that. So that was kind of, in a nutshell, the approach for building an application security program. We're starting with risk profiling, starting with a static approach, starting with a very basic set of characteristics, then adding some monitoring, adding automation to see the changes in the application, and then in a real-time scenario, connecting cloud sensors, connecting multiple vulnerability sensors, connecting multiple intelligence sensors to getting a real-time view of how our application risk profile changes, and then prioritize security activities based on those changes. Some of the next steps, I think, every product company, every team should start doing, if not already doing, right? For sure, we talked about it on the first slide. So have a unified application inventory, include all your application, even they are SaaS, even they are a off-the-shelf product, and introduce kind of one dashboard with all compliance team, with all legal teams, with everyone on the agreement that these are our top 10 risky applications in the organization. Partner with your developers and cultivate security by design mindset. Help them see what happens if we don't do secure coding, what happens if we don't do secure defaults on that, for sure. And as mentioned, build alerting and monitoring, right? So be alerted when a new developer starts committing code into the product. Be alerted of new products, new projects created over the last, let's say, 90 days, or get a list of all active projects over the last 90 days, and then assign a security review or security engineer to review changes on those, and do the training and provide more training for security champions that would later cascade that to their team. Have a view of number of commits per project, right? So how many developers do we have working there? How many code changes do we have in the application? If the code is frequently changing, we need to be frequently monitoring those changes for security, helping the teams be alerted when there's a significant change, right? What we would call an important change or a material change that would require an in-depth review of that, right? So if they upgrade a dependency, this is good. But if they add a new dependency with vulnerabilities, let's talk about it, right? So get the alerting capabilities there. And for sure, be able to say, we have an increase of top 10 vulnerabilities. Let's say we run dust tools or even penetration tests, and suddenly we see an increase on the SQL injection or on the authorization bypass or every other top 10 risk. And then we can say, okay, we need to, on the next quarter, next 30 days, next 60 days, let's focus on just one risk, and let's have that training, lunch and learn sessions, newsletters, have everyone aware that, hey guys, we're trying to mitigate number of SQL injection. We try to mitigate number of cross-site scripting. Here's how it would be solved in C#, Java, .NET, Python, Node.js, JavaScript, and need your help on tackling that within your product teams. Cool. Any questions? Feel free. Thank you very much for your time, guys. So hello, everyone. Very happy to be here. My name is Alex Moore. I'll be sharing my experience on building a process for performing application risk profiling, sometimes also called as risk rating. In a nutshell, as a product security team, we want to have the ability to visualize our application inventory through a risk lens. So by the way, this is also kind of an OWASP SAM activity under the design pillar. So without further ado, my name is Alex Moore. I spent most of my career in information security consulting in the Ernst & Young and then Anheuser-Busch, so only two workplaces for me. Joined 2 years ago for Anheuser-Busch as application security director. Probably not many of you heard of Anheuser-Busch before, but hopefully you are sharing some great moments with your friends, drinking Stella, drinking Budweiser, Corona, Hoegaarden. These are our beers. Overall, in my day-to-day, I help protect product teams into building security into their development lifecycle. So what I do is on the day-to-day, I work with them. At night, I hack their products. So then on the next day, I have some more work to do, and I'm never bored. Probably you guys are wondering, what's in an application security job in a beer company, right? So what would I do on day one? So I travel a lot, and actually on the first day I travel, I actually went to meet all my peers, all my friends, all my application colleagues, enterprise architects, cybersecurity champions, cybersecurity managers throughout our various business units. And then while tasting the local beers, actually try to get their application portfolio. So creating kind of risk profile questionnaire, really started as an Excel, that was an MVP, but then, this is what I'm here to talk about. How do you scale a number of applications into enterprise application risk profiling? So I'm going to start with the content for today for kind of small introduction. How did we get here? How do enterprises really need, thousands of applications, thousands of developers, if what they do is create beer or produce medicine or even sell metal, right? What is the digital transformation, cloud, DevOps everyone's talking about, and what challenges it produces for us today? Then I'll show in a very brief example of what I call a 3-level approach to application risk profiling, starting with a very static, very simple model, then introduce some more characteristic, and then go into real time challenge of protecting application, and then real-time changes of an application risk. I'll do a deep dive to and share some examples into what is dynamic threat modeling, what is the dynamic risk landscape, and then on the real time, we'll kind of show and try to demonstrate some of the code changes that would actually create that sense of real-time changes in the application code, right? One example would be kind of some developer creating a new API that if you don't know about this in real time and that API has no authentication, it would take you, up until the next penetration testing cycle to discover that your application has a different risk, or its application is now vulnerable to some kind of a breach or information disclosure. For those of you who won't be with us until the end of the presentation, it's kind of recommended next steps that I wanted to present and to discuss, is when you're starting your journey on application risk or application risk profiling, inventory, application program. One thing is that you have a unified or a full spectrum of all your applications. You build that inventory and build